Okay.
Hey, hello YouTube channel. My good friend Dennis O'Mara, located in Minnesota, has quite a storied history on industrial sales. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dennis. And, Dennis, can you tell us a little bit about your education and how you came to industrial sales?
Certainly. Thanks for having me on your YouTube channel, Mike. I appreciate that. I'm always happy to share my stories. Anyway, I'm retired from industrial sales. I retired in 2015. I started out in industrial sales in 2000, or pardon me, gosh, over 30 years ago in the late 70s. And I started with industrial pumps, and I stayed in that discipline the entire time I was working. Anyway, I graduated from Bowling Green State University in 1976. I have a Bachelor of Science in Journalism. And within the journalism school, I specialized in public relations, product marketing, and advertising. And I eventually got an opportunity at Robbins and Myers in Springfield, Ohio, as an inside salesperson for their industrial progressive pump line, positive displacement pumps. I was in Springfield, Ohio for a year or so, and then they asked me to go to Northern California to work at a newly built distribution center in Fairfield, California, which I accepted that offer. And I went out there and had these same capacity, inside sales. And then from that, they asked me to go into outside sales, and I would be residing in the Oakland sales office, selling their products to the industrial marketplace in all over the Bay Area and up into Reno and out into Fresno and other areas around that part of California. And then from there, they asked me to go to Southern California with my boss and open an office down there specifically to serve the government-funded municipal projects. And I accepted that offer, and I went down to Los Angeles, where I worked with consulting engineers. I worked with contractors, and this was all involved in expanding and building water treatment and wastewater treatment plants. And so I got a good dose of experience working with contractors and specifying engineers and people along those lines. Some big companies like Bechtel and Fluor Daniel and things like that were involved in those projects. So that was good experience. Then from there, I had an offer to go to a Gould's pump distributor in Los Angeles. I thought I was ready to move away from the municipal side of the business. So I went there with the understanding expectations. I'd learn more about the industrial pump business and learn more about the various scope of products that were involved in industrial pump sales.
Do you think being inside sales, that helped you immensely before you went out on the road? So you knew.
Absolutely, because you're on the phone and you're working, helping sales guys who are out there beating the bushes face to face. You're helping them work through problems with the manufacturer, expediting and service problems and things like that. And so you're the frontline voice oftentimes, because the salesman can't be everywhere. So you get a good understanding of dealing with angry customers and engineering issues and things like that. So yeah, that's absolutely critical. I feel as far as before you jump out into outside sales, because there's so many aspects about it, and the inside sales brings you along in a slower pace. You're not out there in front of the customer, and you have the safety net of sitting there at your desk with a phone and a computer in front of you. So yes, absolutely, I agree that's very helpful.
The other thing is, just for the audience, what are we talking about sell price wise on this? We've talked before, and I know it's a whole gamut, but what's the range of pricing that you had to deal with?
Well, on some of the big some of the big municipal projects, Mike, they can go up to, $500,000. Some of these big expansions like the city of Los Angeles and Orange County and things like that. There's literally hundreds of pumps you can get into a large sum of money. when you're working with industrial pumps with refineries and things like that, like I did with Chevron and Mobil Oil and Sunoco.
Right.
It's not uncommon to have projects that go for $100,000 for just 2 or 3 pumps. Some good volume pumps, 100 horsepower and up, they can be pretty pricey. So, and then you can also be involved in pumps that are $3,000 or $4,000. That's the great thing about industrial sales, in my opinion. You're working with a $2,000 or $3,000 order in the morning, and in the afternoon, you're working with a $500,000 order.
Keeps you young. Definitely keeps you young.
One day you're working with the president of a company, and the next day you're working with the facility engineer of another company. And the next day you're working with the maintenance supervisor. So it's a good experience and fun working with so many different types of people.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite a background and quite a range. And the good thing about your history is you came in with a high dollar, huge sale, but you had a lot of technical backup behind you on that. You weren't out there by yourself until you went independent, and that helped your background as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that was kind of a method to my madness, if you will. I tried to see what it was like on both sides of the street. What I mean by that, I wanted to see what it was like working for a manufacturer. I wanted to see what it was like working for a distributor. That way, I developed a certain amount of empathy that really helped me working with both sides. Most of my career was working with distributors. For distributors and with distributors. So that really helped me, gave me a lot of empathy in working with those guys. The final 15 years of my career, I was a regional manager with Diversified Dynamics Cat Pumps. And a good part of my business was working with OEMs and industrial distributors. And I felt that gave me quite a comfort level in understanding that how those folks went to market and helping them succeed, ultimately helping me to succeed.
Now let's see. Okay, so the typical sales process for you probably the easiest is on you working with distributors or being a distributor yourself. How'd you contact the customer? How were leads generated? What was the sales process?
Well, there's a couple ways to answer that question. Back when I was working for industrial distributors, if you work with established product lines, there's a pretty good base already there that you continue to work with and grow. For example, in my career in Los Angeles and then again in Kansas City, in Bakersfield, I was selling Gould's Pumps, a highly desirable and a very recognizable name within the pump industry. So that certainly opens a lot of doors to you, having that an established base. Beyond that, you meet people at trade shows. You get references and leads from your customers. You develop a relationship with some of these maintenance engineers or mechanical engineers, and if you've helped them succeed by making them look good and making their plant run more efficiently, they're more than happy to share your name with their colleagues. Also, you can be involved in their associations. I was involved in the California Wastewater Association. That was a state-sponsored organization where all these folks would come together for meetings. And there was a handful of vendors there, such as myself, and you meet a lot of those folks there.
Well, did you have to speak there? Did you get the rubber chicken dinner for speaking, or what?
No, they were just happy to have us there to support them and help out their membership wherever we could. So no speaking required with that assignment.
How about I think you were telling me that you had quite a long relationship with the General Motors facility in St. Louis, was it? Or
yeah, well, that's a good story, Mike. I'm happy to share it with you. So,
I know you would.
Yes, yeah. In Kansas City, my favorite account was General Motors, And General Motors built a very large facility in Kansas City where they, at that time, built the Pontiac Trans Am, Grand Prix Trans Am. I think that was the proper nomenclature. Anyway, a lot of the pump engineering, powerhouse equipment, chiller pumps, cooling tower pumps, and such, boiler feed pumps, were all engineered by the Gould's direct sales office out of Detroit. They had a good relationship with General Motors there, and also the mechanical engineers that worked with General Motors. So as a result, very fortuitous for me, that plant had a very significant amount of Gould's pumps on site. So that enabled me to visit that plant as the Gould's representative. And once I had that opportunity, I met some key individuals. And one of the key individuals I met was the manager of the powerhouse, the facilities engineer for the powerhouse. It was a massive plant, something you would see with some small cities, because it supported this plant. It was a standalone building out behind the main manufacturing plant. Anyway, so I got my foot in the door because I was the Gould's representative, and then the gentleman that I called on was he was I would say very leery of salespeople. I think he'd been around a long time, and I think he'd been misled and taken advantage of. So he was very tough on salesmen. So he was going to put me through the ringer before he gave me any pats on the back. So the one story that I'm about to tell you was my walk in the park with this guy. Anyway, he wanted some assistance with installing a mechanical seal in one of the cooling tower pumps. So I said, certainly, Bob, I will be more than happy to help you. And how about if I come down here Friday? He said, no, Dennis, I don't think that's going to work. And I said, okay, Bob, how about Saturday? No, that's not going to work either. I think Sunday at 7 a.m. would be perfect. So I said, yes, sir, I will be here. And I was. He wasn't, but I was there with his maintenance guys. And they were fine union people. And and I was there, as I said, at 7 in the morning. And of course, as a good salesman, I brought donuts, which we sat. Yeah, we sat around at 8 till like about 9 in the morning, 2 hours worth of donuts. Well, then it was time for break. Okay. So we had our break, and then we went out and looked at the equipment. This is one of the situations where you walk clear across the 100-yard floor to get one wrench, and then walk back instead of bringing your whole toolbox over. Anyway, so we did a few walks across the floor, and then it was time to get cleaned up for lunch. Okay, we had lunch. Well, then it was afternoon break. Then it was time to get cleaned up to go home. So we did nothing. So the funny part about that story, many funny parts about the story, a couple of days later, Tuesday, Wednesday, I saw the guy. I said, hey, did you get that seal put in? Oh, yeah, no problem. How long did it take? A half hour. Okay. But I was there. I got my check mark. So 2 weeks later, same conversation. Dennis, I need your help again. Okay, Saturday, Sunday, what? Sunday, 7 a.m. works. Same thing. I was there Sunday at 7 a.m. and we had the same situation where we wasted the entire day walking around and taking our break and getting cleaned up for this and that and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, what that did, Mike, that solidified my relationship with this facility manager, that I was dependable and a go-to guy. From that day forward, he couldn't give me enough business. I set up all his stores for him and labeled everything, and he would say, Dennis, what am I going to buy today? And I said, Bob, you don't need anything. Come on. And I got to the point where I won't say his name. I'm sure he's retired by now, but he would say, I got to go to a meeting. Here, come and sit at my desk and fill out these requisitions. I'll sign them. So I would sit there and write them up, and he would sign them. And then he said, I need you down here more often. And I said, well, Bob, it's hard to get in here. Well, I'll get you a maintenance pass. So he got me a maintenance pass that I hung from the the mirror of my Ford, my Ford, whatever it was, as I'm coming into the General Motors plant. And I was just waved right through to come in. And I'd get there and he'd say, Dennis, who do you want to see now? Who do you want to see today? And I'd say, I want to see so-and-so in paint. So he would get on the radio and call that person and say, where are you? And the gentleman would say, if he'd been to a plant before, he would say J7. That's the markings on the steel supports. It designates where you are in a plant like that. So we'll stay there. I'm sending Dennis O'Mara up. So I'd go up there and another funny part of that story, and I think we talked about this one time, Mike, I found myself in the front of the building looking at some equipment, and I peeked into the lobby, and there had to be 50 or 60 hungry looking salesmen out there, because you have to wait till somebody comes and gets you in their little golf cart to get you into that plant. And those guys are busy and they won't see you unless you're going to, you're a known entity or you're going to help them. They're not going to see you just for a meet and greet. So anyway, that was
But you had the magic pass. Those guys would have killed for.
I did. And Bob, my friend Bob, he was a big concert goer, and he gave some front row tickets to my wife and I for some good rock concerts. He was a good man. I really liked him, and once I left that job to go to Ingersoll Rand in Chicago, and I ended up, I covered Kansas City. I kept up with Bob, and we had a pretty good relationship there. And then, as I say, I think he retired, and then I moved on to other things. But
well, for the young upcoming sales guys, sometimes the shit test is exactly that. To hang in there. Persistence is what gets it. Absolutely,
yeah. These guys. In fact, when you're meeting a new customer, they hear, if they do talk to salesmen, they're kind of hardened and used to being told several lines that aren't true. But ask them straight out. How can I prove myself? Give me your toughest application. Show me the pump that you're tearing apart every 6 months, and I'll try to tell you with the backup of my engineering people and my maintenance guys that run our shop. We'll try to come up with a reason. But don't just throw orders at me. I want to earn them, and I want to earn your respect. And show me your toughest application, toughest service. I'll see what I can do to help.
That's excellent advice. Yeah, that's projecting confidence in your product and your product line support and yourself, and your face-to-face interacting with people. Some you're not going to get in internet days, but
no, and some of these plants, Mike, they've been around a while, and some of these pumps are obsolete. And if you have a decent shop that as part of your distributorship, you can make shafts and you can make sleeves and you can make parts for these pumps, and then you got a friend for life, because you helped them out.
How about that one story about where everybody agreed? They all agreed you had the best pump, but they didn't want it the best pump. They wanted some to band-aid them through so they could get all new pumps at a future date. I forget the rest of that story. But.
Yeah. It was. I was working with. I think it was a Nucor steel plant in Arkansas, Blytheville, Arkansas, as I recall. And they were going to buy hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of pumps, and so I did my research and came in there with guns a-blazing and gave my spiel about why my pumps were best and why it was money well spent. And while they were more expensive, I said, the most expensive pump, sir, is the cheapest in the long run, because you're going to have downtime and maintenance with the cheaper one. So don't be misled. So they said to me, Dennis, we agree with you, and we think your pump is the best way to go. But we only need these pumps to last 3 years, because after 3 years, we're doing a complete redo of that portion of the plant. So sorry, better luck next time.
Whoa.
So
well, it does happen. Have you ever? This is a new one for you. Have you ever had any requirement for legal advice on say a commission dispute, a non-compete clause, or anything like that? And if you did, how did you find the best way to handle that? Maybe you haven't, but that's just another section that we as sales guys out here, we don't run into this all the time, but I do know that there are remedies in some cases.
There are, and your best to your best to head those off at the pass before that you ever get into the providing the product. And you're smart if you get all that paperwork up front and have your legal team take a look at it. Let's just say you're a distributor, and a distributor, of course, as you know, takes title to the goods and they own the pump that's out of your shop. So the ownership is going to have a legal team that supports them, and you would want to work through them. If it's a product where you're just taking a portion of the proceeds, the manufacturer is doing all the billing and taking care of all that stuff. You just brought the lead in. You never took title to the goods. That manufacturer is going to have a legal team too. It's going to be up to them to go over all those legal documents well before the product is delivered. So prevention is the best case there, I believe.
Now, I've always said that sales contracts are for divorces, not for getting in bed with somebody. And,
Yeah. Don't be careful what you're signing your name to, or it's not going to work out.
well, I'm sure, and I know you never had any of that stuff. I've been fortunate. I've never had, but some of my friends have, known people for 40 years in the business, where they didn't know how deep the non-compete thing was until they got out and found out they couldn't work for a competitor or in a similar field for 2 years.
Yeah, and many people will say, well, that non-compete's not enforceable in this state, in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio. Well, it may not be, but the person that you've aggrieved has deep pockets, and they can tie you up in court
For years. Yeah.
and such. And every time you're served or you receive, you're being called in, even though it's frivolous, you still have to have an attorney respond to that motion, and that gets mighty expensive. So that person that you've aggrieved can make your life pretty difficult and bleed you dry, just out of spite, I guess you would say.
True. There are vindictive people out there.
I'm afraid so. Yeah, there are, Mike.
Well, we're getting close to the end here, but one more thing I note, and we've talked about this before, you make a mental note to send an email to everybody that you call on and follow up, and keep that up here. Some unique thing about them, their wedding or their kid's wedding or their golf outing or something like that, if I remember right.
Yeah. One of my goals when I was an industrial sales guy, back when I was working, when I made a call, my goal was to always have something to get back to them, a quote, even a budget quote or something you talked about where you had to generate some paperwork or an email to get back to them. At the very least, you want to send them a thank you. It literally takes a second to sit down at a computer and send an email. Hey, thanks for your time. We talked about this and this and this. And then, as you say, make some notes as to what you talked about. So the next time you see him, whether it's 6 months later, whatever the structure is, you remember what you talked about. And a couple more things I'll say. Return your phone calls. If somebody calls you, get back to them within 24 to 48 hours. There's no excuse for not calling somebody back. Even if you don't have an answer, send them a text. I haven't forgotten. I'm still working on it. It's infuriating not to be called back. There's no excuse for that. And one other piece of advice I would give when you're calling on some of these big clients, or even a small account, respect their time. Why? Respect their time. These guys are busy. 25 years ago, they had 30 people working for them. Now there's one, and they're busy. And if they're looking at their watch, or if their radio is buzzing and down there talking into the shoulder mic, take a hint, wrap it up. Your best advice is to have a script. Before you go in there, be prepared and make notes to yourself what you want to talk about. Because if you don't, you're going to walk out of there and get back in your car and say, darn it, I forgot to ask him about this, that, or the other. So be prepared. Respect his time and yours. Be prepared.
Well, anything else to add, Dennis? Because I think this is some very valuable information.
No, no. The one final thing I'll say is everybody has their own way of doing it, Mike. Some guys are just very gifted at sales, and some guys like me have to work have to work pretty hard at it. But instead of memorizing facts and figures and everything about your product, tell a story. Anecdotal selling for me was very valuable. I'd be at a trade show and I'd get a story from an end user that talked about our product, and I would remember that and I would use that over and over and over. I would say, I talked to so and so, and he owns several car washes just like you, and here's what he told me. Tell your story, and that's coming from the heart, and people know that, and you get a lot of mileage from anecdotal selling, I believe. So I would highly recommend it.
Very good. Hadn't thought about that portion of it, but that's excellent advice. And with that, I want to thank you very much, Dennis.
Thanks,
and
Mike.
I'll be posting it, and
Okay.
let me cut off the recording and
Yes.